The notification hit my phone at 6:47 on a Tuesday morning. I was still in my robe, coffee going cold on the counter, when the number stopped me mid-breath. Past due, $14,380. Eviction proceedings initiated. My name, my lease, my credit. I stood in my kitchen for a full minute reading the same sentence over and over, like the words might rearrange themselves into something that made sense. They didn't. My name is Jordan Ellis. I'm 32 years old. I'm a registered nurse. I work double shifts at a hospital where people come to me when everything falls apart, and I hold it together for them because that's what I do. That's what I've always done, not just at work, at home too, for years, for everyone. And the morning I found out my brother had been living rent-free in the apartment I co-signed for him, subletting the second bedroom on Airbnb and pocketing the cash, not paying a dime of the $1,195 monthly rent I'd guaranteed with my own credit score, was the morning something inside me quietly, permanently shifted. I called him first. Of course I did. That's the thing about being the responsible one in the family. You always call first. You always try to understand. You always give the benefit of the doubt. Because somewhere deep down, you're still the older sister who used to cut the crusts off his sandwiches and lie to your parents when he came home past curfew. He picked up on the fourth ring. I could hear a TV in the background. Not stressed, not concerned, just casual. I asked him about the lease, about the past due notice, about the $14,380 the property management company was now holding me responsible for because my name was the one on the dotted line. There was a pause. Then he laughed. Not nervously, just laughed, the way someone does when they think the other person is overreacting to something small. He said it was just a rough patch. He said the Airbnb income dried up after a policy change. He said he was going to catch up. He said, and this is the part that made my hands go completely still. He said I should have expected this when I offered to help him. I told him I never offered to let him stop paying rent entirely. I told him co-signing meant I was the guarantee, not the replacement. He cut me off. He said I made good money. He said nurses did fine. He said I didn't need to be so dramatic about it. He said I always made things bigger than they were. Then my mother called. She must have been sitting right next to him because it couldn't have been 30 seconds later. She said, "Honey, your brother is going through something." She said, "You know how sensitive he is." She said, "You have a stable job. And you know how hard things are for people who didn't get the same opportunities." She said that last part like I hadn't grown up in the exact same house, with the exact same parents, eating the exact same cereal when there was nothing else in the cabinet. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I said, "Mom, the eviction notice is in my name." She said, "Well then, you should help him fix it." I said, "I'm going to handle it." And I meant that in a way she didn't understand yet. After I hung up, I sat down at my kitchen table with a notepad, a highlighter, and 3 years of quietly swallowed resentment that had finally calcified into clarity. I pulled up every document I had. The original lease, the co-signer addendum, the email chain where my brother had asked me, just for 6 months, just until he got back on his feet after the breakup, just until the freelance work picked back up. That had been 22 months ago. I called the property management company first. I explained that I was the co-signer, not the primary resident, and that I had discovered the primary tenant had been subletting the unit without authorization, which was a direct violation of the lease terms. The woman on the phone asked if I wanted to file a formal complaint. I said yes. She said it would trigger an investigation and possible lease termination. I said I understood. Then I called my bank. I explained the situation, that I was facing a financial liability I had not agreed to, and I asked about my options for documenting financial harm caused by a family member who had misrepresented their intentions when I co-signed. The banker walked me through the process. I took notes. Neat, precise notes, the way I chart medications at work. Documented and dated. Then I called a tenant rights attorney, not because I was the tenant, because I needed to understand exactly what a co-signer could and could not do when the primary leaseholder had violated terms. The attorney told me several things I found very useful. By noon, I had a plan. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was paperwork. The first thing I did was notify the property manager, that I was formally requesting to be removed as co-signer based on the lease violations. They told me removal required the primary tenant to qualify independently or find a new co-signer within 30 days, or the lease would be terminated. I said I understood completely. The second thing I did was contact every utility account that had my name attached to that apartment. There were 3. My brother had apparently added himself to my accounts when he moved in because it was easier than setting them up in his own name. I hadn't known. I found out when I started pulling my full credit profile and saw the accounts listed. I called each provider and removed my name, effective at the end of the current billing cycle, 2 weeks out. The third thing I did was the one that took me the longest to decide on. I had co-signed a small personal loan for my brother 14 months earlier. $5,000 for a truck he needed for work, he had said. The loan was current. He had been making minimum payments, but the loan agreement had a clause about material changes in the borrower's financial situation, and given that he had no verifiable income anymore, I exercised my right as co-signer to flag the account for review. I called the lender. I told them the primary borrower's Airbnb income had ceased and asked them to conduct a routine income verification. I did not lie. I did not exaggerate. I just asked the question I had every right to ask. My phone lit up that evening like I had thrown a match into a room full of dry leaves. My brother first. Where is this coming from? Why are you doing this? I was going to handle it. You didn't have to go nuclear. Then my mother. Jordan, the property manager, called. What is going on? This is your brother's home. You can't do this. Then my aunt, whom I had not spoken to in 7 months. Honey, I heard there's some trouble with the apartment. You know your brother loves you. Then a cousin I barely knew, whose number I didn't even have saved, somehow weighing in with a text that said, "Family doesn't do this to each other." I read every message. I responded to none of them. What I did instead was open a folder on my laptop I had labeled, very simply, documentation. Inside were the original lease agreement, every text message where my brother had promised to pay, the initial email where he had said it would be 6 months maximum, screenshots of the Airbnb listing for his apartment with his name on the host profile, dated, with the price per night visible. Bank statements from the past 8 months showing 0 transfers from him to any account connected to the lease payments. The eviction notice. I printed everything, put it in a manila envelope, and I drove to the non-emergency police station and filed a report for financial fraud. The officer at the desk asked me if I was sure I wanted to file against a family member. I said yes. I told him I was a nurse. I said I had been the financial backbone of my family for 11 years, since I was 21 years old and got my first job, and I had nothing to show for it except a credit score that was now being threatened by someone who laughed when I brought it up. The officer took my statement. He gave me a case number. That case number went into the documentation folder. I want to tell you something about that night. I got home. I made dinner, actually cooked it, something I hadn't done properly in weeks because I'd been too exhausted from double shifts and the low-grade dread of always waiting for the next emergency my family would bring me. I ate at my kitchen table. I watched something on television that had nothing to do with anything serious, and I slept through the entire night for the first time in longer than I could honestly remember. There is something they don't tell you about being the strong one in the family. The cost isn't just money, though it is money. Thousands and thousands of dollars over the years that you stopped counting because counting felt ungrateful. The cost is also this. You are always on call, you are never fully off duty. Some part of your brain is always running a background process called "What does my family need and how bad is it and can I fix it before it gets worse?" And when you shut that process down, even forcibly, even through documentation and phone calls and manila envelopes, the silence that follows is not emptiness, it's space. It might be the first real space you have ever given yourself. My brother's lease was terminated 26 days after I filed the violation complaint. He called me 14 times in the 48 hours before the termination was finalized. I answered once. He said I had ruined his life. I said I had protected mine. He said I was selfish. I told him I had co-signed that apartment because I believed him when he said he needed a hand getting stable. I told him I had paid for his truck loan, his phone plan, his security deposit, and 3 separate grocery hauls in the past 2 years because I thought I was helping him build something. I told him the word for what he had done to me was not a rough patch. It was exploitation. He went quiet for a moment. Then he said I sounded like a stranger. I said maybe I finally did. And I ended the call. My mother showed up at my apartment 2 days later, unannounced. She had driven 40 minutes, which she only did when she wanted something she couldn't get over the phone. I watched through the peephole for a moment before I opened the door. She looked tired. She had that expression I had known my whole life, the one that lived somewhere between genuine sadness and practiced performance. And I had spent 32 years never being sure which one it was. I opened the door. I did not invite her in right away. I just looked at her. She said she hadn't raised me to treat family this way. She said my brother was struggling. She said I had more than enough, and he had so little, and that was exactly when family was supposed to step up. She said she was disappointed in me. I asked her if she remembered when I was 19, and I worked 30 hours a week while taking a full course load, and she called me every Friday to ask if I could cover the cable bill because she and my father had overspent on something. She said that was different. I asked her how. She didn't answer. I asked her if she remembered my 25th birthday, when I had asked everyone to just come to dinner. Just one dinner together, and my brother had texted me that morning to ask if I could Venmo him money for the gift he was going to get me, which he never actually got. She said I was bringing up old things. I told her the old things never went anywhere. I told her I had just stopped pretending they had. She started to cry. Not the quiet kind. The kind that had always worked on me before, the shaking shoulders and the trembling lip, the sound that had pulled me back from every boundary I had ever tried to set since I was old enough to understand what the word boundary meant. I felt it start to work on me the way it always had, that pull in the chest, that instinct to reach out and say, okay, I'll fix it. Instead, I took a breath, and I said, Mom, I love you. And I can't be your emergency fund or his. Not anymore. She said she couldn't believe I was saying this. I said I couldn't believe it had taken me this long. She left without us resolving anything. She posted something on Facebook that evening. Something vague and wounded about how the people you sacrifice for sometimes forget everything you gave them, her friends commented. Some of them tagged me. I deactivated my Facebook account that night and didn't lose a minute of sleep over it. The loan on the truck went into review. The lender found that my brother could not verify the income he had listed on the original application, which had been, I later learned, inflated. The loan was not forgiven. He still owed it. But I was flagged as a co-signer at risk and given the option to pursue co-signer release based on documented misrepresentation. I submitted the paperwork. My name was off it within 6 weeks. I started therapy around this time. I had been telling myself for years that I didn't need it, that I was fine, that I was functional, that lots of people had complicated families and they managed. My therapist asked me in our second session to describe my earliest memory of feeling responsible for someone else's problem. I didn't have to think. I said I was 9 years old, and my parents had a bad fight about money, and I remembered lying in my bed afterward, thinking about how I could make it better. 9 years old, already running that background process, already auditioning for the role of family fixer before I even understood the job description. My therapist said something I've thought about almost every day since. She said the thing that made me good at caring for others, the instinct to notice what people needed and move toward it, was also the thing that had been used against me. She said it wasn't a flaw. It was a quality that had been taken advantage of by people who learned early that I would always show up. And the work wasn't to stop caring. The work was to learn the difference between generosity and extraction, between helping someone up and being climbed on. I cried in that session, not because I was sad exactly, because something that had been wound very tight for a very long time finally had room to loosen. My brother found a new place 3 months later. I heard through my cousin that he moved in with a friend, that he was doing okay, that he was annoyed at me but managing. I felt nothing dramatic when I heard that. Not satisfaction, not guilt. Just a kind of neutral steadiness, like checking a box that had been left open too long. My mother and I did not speak for almost 4 months. When she reached out again, It wasn't the usual approach. No performance, no guilt, just a short text. She said she had been thinking. She said she knew things had not been fair to me. She said she was not sure how to fix it, but she wanted to try. I read that message 3 times. I did not respond immediately. I let myself think about it over several days, which was something the old version of me never would have done. The old version would have called back within the hour, relieved and eager to smooth everything over, to return to the dynamic that hurt me, because at least it was familiar. Instead, I wrote back after 4 days. I told her I appreciated her message. I told her I was open to rebuilding something, but it would have to be different, not transactional, not based on what I could provide or cover or absorb. I told her I wanted a relationship where she called me because she wanted to talk to me, not because something had broken and she needed it fixed. She said she understood. I don't know yet if she does, but she said it. And that was a beginning. There's something I want to tell you about the months after all of this happened. I got a promotion. Charge nurse. I had been eligible for it for 2 years, but every time the opportunity came up, there was something happening, something at home that was draining my energy and stealing the bandwidth I needed to actually focus on my own trajectory. The first time I passed on the application, my brother needed help with the security deposit. The second time, my mother had a health scare that turned out to be nothing serious but consumed 3 weeks of my headspace. This time, nothing was pulling at me. I applied. I interviewed. I got it. I went to dinner alone the night I found out. Sat at a table by myself, at a place I had always wanted to try and never gone to because it felt indulgent. Ordered exactly what I wanted. Sat with my own good news for an hour without pulling out my phone to share it with anyone who would immediately follow congratulations with a favor. It was one of the better evenings I can remember. My cousin reached out around this time. Not the one who had forwarded the family group chat drama. A different cousin, Leah, who had always been quiet and observant and said very little at family gatherings but noticed everything. She texted me and said, "I've been watching what you did from a distance, and I just want you to know I think it took more courage than most people will ever understand." I saved that message. I still look at it sometimes. I ran into my brother at a family event in the fall. Our grandmother's birthday. Neutral ground, chosen carefully. He looked different. Not bad, just smaller, somehow, than he had always seemed in my head. He was polite. He didn't bring up the apartment or the loan. He asked how work was going. I told him about the promotion. He said that was great. There was a moment between us that was not warm and was not hostile. It was just honest. 2 people who had stopped pretending the dynamic between them was something other than what it was. I did not feel the urge to smooth it over. I did not feel the need to make him comfortable. I asked how he was doing. He said okay. We ate our grandmother's birthday cake on opposite sides of the table, and the world did not end. On the drive home, I thought about what the past year had cost me and what it had given me. On the cost side, some relationships that had never been as solid as I believed, the comfortable numbness of never confronting anything, the identity of being the one who could handle it. On the other side, 1 promotion, 1 therapist who has been more honest with me than anyone in my family ever was, the ability to sleep through the night, the knowledge that I can pay every single bill I have and none of them belong to someone else's choices. I know there are people who will look at what I did and call it cold. I have read the comments people leave on stories like mine. Some people will say family is family. Some people will say blood is blood. Some people will say I should have been more patient, more compassionate, more willing to carry a little longer. And I want to say something to those people, not with anger, just with honesty. I was patient for 11 years. I was compassionate when I worked a double shift and then transferred money so someone else's lights stayed on. I carried longer than anyone knew because I never talked about it. I never made them feel small for needing me. I just kept showing up. There is a version of compassion that sustains you and the people around you. And there is a version that empties you until there is nothing left to give. And the people who have been receiving it barely notice because they have never had to think about where it came from. I spent a long time living in the second version. I don't live there anymore. My credit score, when I checked it last week, was 31 points higher than it was the morning I got that eviction notice. It's a small thing. But I looked at that number for a long time. Because it represents a version of my life where my financial stability belongs to me. Where my name on a document means what I agreed to, nothing more. Where I am not a safety net, not an emergency contact, not an account that never closes. I am a nurse. I take care of people professionally. I'm good at it. I will keep being good at it. But I do it now from a place that has been refilled, not scraped clean. I go home at the end of a shift, and my apartment is quiet, in a way that used to feel lonely, and now just feels like mine. I make dinner. I water the small plant on my kitchen windowsill that I bought myself when all of this was resolved. I read. I call Leah sometimes. I see my therapist every other Tuesday. I do not wait for a notification to tell me something has gone wrong. I do not sit with my phone nearby in case someone needs something I will feel guilty not providing. I live, fully, in the silence I chose for myself. And if you're somewhere in the middle of your own version of this, still carrying weight that was handed to you so long ago you forgot it wasn't yours, I want you to hear this. The discomfort of choosing yourself will pass. The clarity that comes after it does not. You are allowed to stop being the person everyone else drains. You are allowed to be someone who belongs entirely to yourself.